Welcome back to the NC Squared Conspiracy Podcast. My name is Simon.
I'm Chance.
And this is episode 8.
Yeah.
It is. Episode 8. Today, per viewer request, we're going to talk about Monsanto and its various affiliates, its history, what it used to be, what it is now.
There's a lot going on.
And what's wrong with it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that company.
There's a lot going on. And, of course, we're talking about Monsanto today because there's 8 letters in Monsanto, and it's the 8th episode.
Oh, I didn't even realize it.
I just made that up. I think there is, though.
Do the math.
I have other things to do.
That's how
But we need to, first we're going to thank all of our viewers and all of our supporters. Everybody who has listened to episodes we have already put out, left comments, left ratings, helping us better the business.
Is it a business right now?
It's not a business right now. It's a podcast, though. We're bettering the podcast with
like
every comment that people leave.
Heck yeah, we are.
This is one of the first episodes that we've done that was actually a viewer request.
Which is awesome. Well, we did do the 5.
That was a vote.
Yeah.
We gave them 2 options.
This was a specific
This
request.
was, someone mentioned this one, and we thought, that's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
And it kind of plays into an episode we did a while ago on climate control. So if you haven't watched that one,
It does.
go and check it out. But again, thanks to all the viewers. Thank you for listening and continuing to listen.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody on Patreon. They donate money to us, and it pays for our RSS hosting fees, as well as our drinks and our snacks. Today we got some Little C's pizza.
Yeah.
Little Caesars, of course.
Can't really beat $5 pizza.
You can't. Looks like you're drinking a Spire Mountain cider again, and I'm sipping on an Angry Orchard. Got some candy. Ready to get into it.
I really don't mind the Spire, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's, it's a
I
little
think it's all
different.
right. It's a little dry,
A little dry. Yeah, a little dry.
but that's all right. I'm just picky with my ciders, I think.
It's much more crisp.
It is. It says it's crisp, so that makes sense. For me, like, I moved from drinking soda to drinking ciders in the beer realm when I came of age. And so I like them a bit sweeter. I know most people think a sweet cider is a bad thing, but to me, it's not.
I'm not a big beer drinker, but
I'm not either.
I can knock back a little cider.
This is pretty much the only time I drink. Just about.
Yeah.
But-
I mean, honestly, I can't remember the last time.
I guess we'll stop wasting time. Monsanto, go.
Company?
They are a company.
That's, let's go with that.
Founded in 1901, right?
Yeah.
As a chemical company originally by John Francis Queeny.
Yeah.
I learned named Monsanto because his wife's name was Olga Monsanto.
Yep.
Named it after her.
Named it after her. Really, it was probably just a strong name back then.
What a swell guy. Swell guy. Mr. Queeny, we're going to call him.
It's perfect.
Mr. Queeny was in the medicine business before this as well. He worked at a pharmacy for a long time, worked his way up through the pharmaceutical business, and then he moved to St. Louis, I believe, where Monsanto was started.
Well, before that, what happened is the Chicago fire. His family was displaced because of it. And
That's right.
So he
That's
moved.
when he was a child, though.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, when he was a child in Chicago, they were misplaced by the Chicago fire.
yeah.
And then I believe he moved up through the pharmaceutical ranks in Chicago, and then he moved to St. Louis to start the
because
Monsanto Corporation.
I think he was going to school for like some type of art degree or something like that, and then he ended up having to get a job after the fire.
We can
and that's
say
what
that.
caused him to move up the pharmaceutical.
I'll choose to believe that.
I my research.
Right.
So
They became popular originally because they made saccharin. Saccharin is an artificial sweetener that you can still find in a lot of things today.
no nutritional value.
No nutritional value, but it's supposed to be like infinitely sweeter than sugar.
30 times or something
Some
like
of
that.
it like is ridiculous. It's supposed to be way sweeter than sugar.
Basically in like
I
Splenda
don't
and
drink
stuff, I
diet
think.
drinks, so I don't know. But they got a contract for Coca-Cola.
Yep.
They provided the saccharin for Coca-Cola. They also created other synthetic sweeteners. Vanillin is one of them. Multiple others.
Yep. And basically anything related to like a chemical, like
They were a chemical company, just in general. Later on, they ended up getting contracts with the government, the military, etc. And we'll get into all that. But so far, Nothing wrong. It seems like a wholesome company where he named it after his sweet wife, Olga.
Olga
Monsanto.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably pretty straight across dude. Probably wasn't greedy or anything.
No, it seems all right so far. Take us to the next step.
The next step was, well, first we'll talk about how he became such a Goliath in the whole era.
With
World War One kicking off. First of all, Germany kicked his butt at being able to sell artificial sweeteners.
Right.
He barely could turn a profit.
Wait, hang on. Did I say they invented saccharin? They didn't invent saccharin.
No. To
clarify, but he manufactured saccharin. He was the first person to manufacture saccharin in the United
US.
States, is what happened. Prior to that, it was manufactured in Germany.
Well, I don't know if it was his. I don't think it was the same exact thing as Germany, but
it was an artificial sweetener.
Yeah, it was an artificial sweetener. But boiling it down, it came down to where Germany's companies were much better at it. They had a much better supply.
They undercut Monsanto.
Yeah, they would just undercut him because they wanted to burn his business out. They wanted to make it to where he couldn't turn a profit.
That's what you do as a business.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Big business, and someone might, threaten you. So World War One, when we basically stopped taking supplies from Germany, that's when he really exploded. That's when all of his hard work up to that
ban
point.
On imports from Germany.
Yeah, his first 10 years, he was only $10,000 profitable. Then it turned into $900,000 profitable.
Yeah, I forget. I think it was 1917 was their major profitable year. It went from, like you said, it was $10,000 or $15,000 to $900,000 at the end of the year.
And these are $1970 numbers. So
1917.
Yeah. Or $1917.
So that's good.
Millions and millions.
He's making a lot of money suddenly, and it's because even after the war ended and we started receiving imports from Germany again, the company was
already really well established.
Right, Monsanto was, and the company that used to undercut them in Germany either were gone or could not continue to provide in the same way they were before.
Well, they had to pay war reparations and stuff. Massive amount
exactly.
of money.
No fault of theirs.
Yeah, they just couldn't really bounce back. So
makes sense. So they kind of dominated the U.S. market after that.
Yep.
Thus, Monsanto with their sweeteners.
Yeah.
Again, it seems really...
They're just your average business right now.
Right now. Come the 20s, they are still a chemical business.
Mm-hmm.
These are artificial things that they're creating.
Yeah.
In the 20s, they created a coolant that was often found in transformers, some appliances as well.
Yeah, it's PCB.
PCB, polychlorinated biphenyl is what it is. It was a coolant that was found in transformers and appliances at the time. It is not anymore, but supposedly unserviced transformers that you can see, up on the power poles and stuff, they'll have stickers on you warning you that they have PCB content. PCB was extremely harmful, right?
Yeah, it was a really toxic chemical.
It was really toxic. They did not know at the time, but later they figured out.
Yeah, 1938, I think.
It was in the 30s. I think you're right, 38. Eventually they did know that it was bad.
And they kept it secret.
Right. But they continued manufacturing it because it was making them money. The largest PCB manufacturing plant was actually in the town of Monsanto.
Oh, yeah.
They actually...
Well, then they buy out the town. That's why it got named Monsanto.
They bought the town so that they could do their own regulations.
Yeah.
Is what it was.
Because at the time, local government was what enforced the environmental regulations.
Yeah.
Federal didn't really get involved at all.
Yeah, the town is still there. It's called Sauget now. But the factory is still there, but it was the largest PCB manufacturing plant ever. So you build the largest manufacturing plant ever, it must be making you some money.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. And so 38, we're going to go with, because that's what you said.
I feel like that's the number I
They knew it was bad around that time, but we don't come back to that till later. 1939 is when they became the military's main supplier of chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
1939. Styrene was what their main contract was for. Styrene was a major chemical compound found in the production of rubber tires. Obviously important. Automobiles.
That was one of the driving forces of anything.
A growing business. Still.
Yeah, I mean...
Be interested to look into it. I bet you it's still in tires today. They probably don't have the patent anymore for styrene, but...
Probably not.
That's how they started making some major money. Military contracts always do that for people.
That's pretty much how you, as a business, like a military contract's like the buku bucks. Like
exactly,
you can sign them on for X amount of years for X amount of money, and you can make a killing on that.
That's very true.
Hence Burger King.
They also they manufactured the neutron initiator in the bombs that were dropped on Japan.
Yep. The atomic bomb. They had their fingers in a lot of stuff.
They did. They're in the power grid. They're creating something that's essential for the power grid and automotive in general with the styrene. And now they're creating neutron initiators for atomic bombs.
Yeah, for the atomic bomb.
Yeah. So
that's an influential company if you can get into such a secretive project.
You know that they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, well, they're making bombs for the military. The military wouldn't choose them unless they were good for it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, basically getting a company to give you a good product for a low price, that's like what the military and government want the most. And
sure,
if you can get that contract.
And they may not have been concerned with price being the military and also...
Or really the effects of what they were doing.
That's true. They were pretty excited about the bombs. So.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, that was like the biggest, baddest weapon of the world. So,
but that wasn't the end of run-ins with the military and Monsanto.
No.
Come the Vietnam era, they developed Agent Orange.
Yeah, it was like a pesticide to attack the Viet Cong's crops and stuff and kill them off.
That was the intention.
That was the intention, but the backfire of what that pesticide basically did to the people, not to mention our own soldiers, who your average vet from that era is still going to the VA on a regular basis to try to get treatment for.
A lot of people don't even know. We could do a whole episode on Agent Orange.
Oh, it's a pretty terrible one.
A lot of people don't even know of Agent Orange, but you summed it up good there. It was a pesticide. I don't think pesticide's the right word. It was supposed to destroy the crops.
Yeah.
For the Vietnam people. It was supposed to destroy their crops.
I think it was marketed as a pesticide or whatever.
Sure. But it was supposed to give us a strategic advantage.
Oh, yeah. Basically starve them out.
Yeah. But what ended up happening, I believe it worked.
Yeah. It killed off tons of crops.
It actually, it was considered to be, it was chemical warfare.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, people had a lot of problems.
Yeah, because I don't know how that conversation went. We need to kill off their crops. Monsanto, can you deliver this?
I think we talked about it really briefly in the climate control episode.
Really briefly.
But Agent Orange, they decided it was chemical warfare. After that was the treaty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Against chemical warfare. Or it was revised or something.
Yeah, I think it was revised.
A little too late, unfortunately, because they just used chemical warfare.
See, a lot of those little things that are done is the Vietnam War was considered a police action, is what they called it. After one, we didn't win, but two, really bad things happened.
Yeah.
So that kind of is its own area we could talk about for a full episode for sure. How it started, which was basically proven later that it was false attack on us.
Yeah. There's still lawsuits going on over the use of Agent Orange and its effects on people both in Vietnam and also the soldiers, the U.S. soldiers that were in Vietnam at the time, people still suffering from it.
Yeah.
Be it the families or the vet themselves.
Mm-hmm. And that's the big one. That is Agent Orange. Is their big setback as a company is what everybody says is that's what they're tied to. That's their dark, dirty little secret.
Right.
But they have so many other things. Yeah.
Well, because with the PCB that we were talking about earlier and the Transformers, they later banned them from producing it because they figured out how bad it was. And they knew that Monsanto knew how bad it was. But they weren't going to stop making it because there was nothing saying they couldn't.
Yeah.
Plus so they said they couldn't, but it wasn't like people were out there suing them trying to get money from them because it directly damaged them. They just didn't want them to keep making it because
They didn't want
how harmful it was.
They didn't want to say, yeah, we're still making it, even though it's terrible for people. Right. But when a big, massive company like that has such a hold on a market for a particular product, like that's why monopolies aren't supposed to be legal. Now, obviously, they didn't have a monopoly per se, but you almost create a monopoly when you develop something that's so cheap, so easy to produce, and then you're the only manufacturer of it. Those monopolies, one, kill other businesses, but two, when something is really bad with that product, there's a giant vacuum if you end up like completely outlawing it and taking it off of the shelves. That vacuum has to be filled somehow, and that's what farmers are dealing with right now with the pesticides and stuff that they use.
Right.
Is that, you know, they obviously deal with a lot of GMO crops and pesticides, but there's nobody to fill that massive vacuum if like you just pull all of that off the shelves.
That's true. And we're going to give people background on that because people might not be 100% knowledgeable on that either. We're going to fast forward a little bit further. Come the 70s, Monsanto became one of the pioneers of mass manufacturing LED lights.
Oh yeah, that was an odd
LEDs
one.
are everywhere now.
Yeah.
Like, literally, we have LED lighting here in the studio.
Yeah.
We do. People
along with
have,
candlelight.
Like LED TVs. LED is a big deal. It brought the price of LEDs down at the time from over $200 a unit to less than 10 cents a unit.
Yeah.
So your LED TV, you might not be able to have that without Monsanto.
Heck no, you
Monsanto
wouldn't.
has
not
been...
for the price.
There are many bad things to say about Monsanto. Monsanto has also been like a key part of many massive developments over the history of the United States.
Well, the money they spend in their R&D is like crazy,
absurd
amounts.
And they spend billions on research and
I
development.
think last year, like maybe not last year, but the last reported one was like $1.6 billion.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to. You have a company that's creating chemicals. They're also, you know, they have their fingers in with the military. They're creating tires, transformers. Now
LEDs.
They're creating LED lights.
Yeah.
And then come 1980s, 1983 to be exact, they developed the very first genetically modified plant.
Yep. And who was that guy? It was, Robert Shapiro, I think?
That's a good guess. I don't know.
I think that was, or he might have been the CEO at the time, but the scientist himself, like, created it. And then Monsanto holds the patent because the scientist works for Monsanto. So.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. So.
Normally when you hear about Monsanto now, it's in reference to GMOs. Because GMOs in themselves have a lot of controversy around them.
And for anyone out there that doesn't know what GMO is.
Genetically modified organism.
And that's exactly what it is. It means that they went into the DNA of said item or organic material such as corn or anything really.
Mostly, I believe it was corn, soy, and cotton plants, but all sorts of stuff, canola and stuff like that.
Yeah, they've got their hands in a lot of different ones. But basically, they go into the DNA of it and they can get rid of certain traits. They can strengthen certain traits. And that's what genetically modifying them is. Everyone thinks GMO is instantly just, it's a terrible thing that they're making like, you know, some poisonous thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A GMO doesn't have to be a bad thing. At first, it wasn't.
Yep.
I believe the original GMOs, it was just to...
shorten their seed life.
It was shorten their seed life.
So they could plant and harvest 2 times in a harvest period rather than once.
Big deal.
Yeah, that's a huge step.
Changes the course of time. Like
especially
having twice as much food. It really does. It does.
For 7 billion people on the planet, being able to harvest your crop twice.
Absolutely. No.
That's huge.
Definitely.
But I mean,
that's where the controversy comes in, though.
Yeah. And then
this is what they did. They created these GMO products. They figured out this is where the big money is. Obviously, there's big money in that. People are able to plant more food. Well, harvest more food. And then they take it even further from there. What they did is they created Roundup later.
Yeah.
A lot of people have heard of Roundup before. It was a pesticide. And then along with the development of Roundup, this is in the 80s as well. Along with the development of Roundup, they also created a genetically modified seed that was resistant to their own pesticide.
Yeah.
So what that enabled them to do is, because before you had to plant your crops so far apart from each other so that you could successfully spray pesticides on them.
Yeah, so you could get down to the weeds.
Right, because the pesticides were bad for the plants.
So you couldn't dump a lot of the
You couldn't dump a bunch on it. But now that they had these seeds that were resistant to it, right, they could just plant them. They said you can get twice as much out of a square acre. You can plant them closer together, and you can just dump Roundup over the entire thing.
The key word here is
grow.
douse them.
Douse them, exactly.
Now, when people think pesticides, and some people are like, oh, well, your plant doesn't really get affected by pesticides that much. It doesn't attack them. Think about the fact that you had to plant them that far away because you couldn't dump X amount of pesticide on it, otherwise the food absorbs it.
Sure. Right, exactly.
So, like, anyone who out there who says, like, the chemicals dumped on your plants to protect them from weeds and insects doesn't affect you, that's silly, because that's actually why we had to plant them so far away. It's because if you dump too much, it directly affects the plant and who's eating it.
Well, because Monsanto has stated multiple times that Roundup is actually not bad for you. That is what they say.
Yeah.
Though the thousands and tens of thousands of lawsuits that have been filed against it would say otherwise. I just saw last night, even, because you can still buy Roundup. Roundup is still a thing.
It's still on the shelf.
I saw an advertisement that said if you or a loved one suffer from, I can't remember, there was a huge list of things. If you suffer from any of these things and you've used Roundup pesticides in the past, you could be entitled to compensation. I thought that was kind of funny because I had not seen one of those commercials in a really long time.
And it's, I mean, you see it all the time. But
I used to see them all the time,
Yeah.
but seeing it for Roundup specifically, hadn't seen that in a really long time. So I thought that was kind of silly.
I wonder why not, too. Like, it must be because they're winning the cases recently.
Sure.
Like, ever since, like, the 2000s.
Well, Roundup was a really big deal for him, too, because at the time, I don't remember what it was, but regulations prevented them from developing one of their major products. They almost went bankrupt at the time. And then
Roundup saved them.
Roundup saved them. Roundup was a big deal. At the time, nobody knew that Roundup was horrible for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's with anything new to the market. You don't know until you actually see the effects, usually years down the road.
Exactly. And up until the 2000s, they actually had a patent on glyphosates that they had created. These glyphosates were key in these Roundup pesticides that were so good. So not only did they develop this awesome pesticide, they made sure they were the only people that could sell it, and it was considered essential to farmers at the time. They were the only ones who were allowed to sell it up into the 2000s.
Yeah.
So they were making mad money at this point.
Again, monopoly.
Exactly. Mid-90s, people start getting upset about Roundup. People like lawsuits in the 90s and onward.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the Roundup, to be honest. I just know a little bit about what happened, but that's an area where I'm like a little weak on.
No, yeah, Roundup's what saved them from bankruptcy. They were the only ones who could sell it up into the 2000s, so they were making mad money off of it. People started to get upset about it. They started claiming that they were having effects from using it.
Yeah.
Monsanto says they used it improperly. Monsanto also says that it's as safe as table salt. So how to use table salt the wrong way? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But then the end of the 90s, more so, Monsanto's chemical department became Solutia. 1997, actually.
Yep.
Their chemical department became Solutia. Part of them becoming Solutia was trying to wash their hands of the Agent Orange incident. Mm-hmm. Also wash their hands of all the people who were upset about Roundup, upset about the PCBs that they had developed. Some people at this point are already angry about the fact that they make chemicals that are used in making tires. You kind of need tires. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
well, it came down to where it's a smart business move to be greedy, but it was really terrible because a lot of people were affected, not just because of the lawsuits, but I think we were talking a little bit about the employees themselves. People who had retirements lined up and stuff like that when they changed their company's name and then opened a new company with the same old name.
Right. So you're getting a little ahead of me here. 1997 is when their chemical department became Solutia.
Yeah.
2003, Solutia filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
The chemical department itself. I get where you're going. I had to get that date in there. 1997, they became Solutia. 2003, they filed for bankruptcy. I was informed. My grandfather actually worked for Monsanto for 30 plus years. And in them becoming, he worked for them when they were making the transition from Monsanto to Solutia.
Yeah.
Then when Solutia filed for bankruptcy, they didn't have to pay out anybody's retirement. They took everybody's retirement money.
See?
Right? Because they didn't have any money to pay them, I guess. But Monsanto reigns on.
Of course.
Monsanto is still around, and they just claim to be a new company, but they're actually not.
Yeah, when you actually went to their website, it says, we're a relatively new company.
By relatively new, you mean you've been around for 100 years.
Yeah, since 1901 or something like that.
1901. So they've been around for quite a while at that point.
Literally.
But again, that's something the businesses do. They were trying to wash their hands of their ill past that people were so upset about.
Well, we've talked about this with GE and stuff. And the funny thing is that we were talking about Monsanto being involved with GE with the weather control at the same time.
Right, that's true. Where are you going with that?
No, I mean, it's just someone who's a company that's involved in chemicals is now directly involved in agriculture and weather and climate control.
Right.
And then, like, GE sells itself off.
Yeah,
after all of that, Monsanto, you didn't hear anything of Monsanto at the time. They just kind of took all of their patents and research that they got with GE and then kind of just shuffled off into their corner and pretended like they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, we keep referencing back to the climate control episode, but that's because we did talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Monsanto had investments with GE. GE were the people who essentially started practicing cloud seeding, which was the earliest form of what you could call weather control or climate control, controlling where the rain falls, that sort of thing.
Yes, and if you wanted to hear a little bit more about that and the whole conspiracy behind it, you should definitely go back and listen to our episode.
Check it out.
It's got a lot of detail about that whole era of like the cloud seeding and the climate control, basically. So.
Yeah. And we go back into history for that one, too. So we're into the 2000s now. Are we current enough?
I think we're current enough.
We've formed some opinions on Monsanto at this point.
A little bit.
Started off all right. Plain old business.
Plain old business.
Then they start working for the military.
Did some shady stuff.
Made some people upset. Well, yeah, Monsanto basically, like, fueled and developed what we used to come up with the chemical warfare treaty.
Well, yeah, and then before that, they helped kill hundreds of thousands of people in nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
Those weren't the only 2 nuclear bombs they probably helped build. Those were just the 2.
So their morals are questionable.
I mean, they follow where the money is, and I mean, most companies are going to be looking at what makes them the most money for the cheapest and easiest targets.
Yeah.
And usually with the least amount of risk.
Yeah.
But I don't think they really care about the risk.
Right.
Because they've got your fingers in pharmaceutical, chemical, agricultural.
What risk do you run if you're doing it for the military?
Yeah. Well, not
the
just
government.
Yeah. Not just the military, but just when you're that massive power. Like they lost $290 million towards these lawsuits. There's like 11,000 were awarded findings and money.
There's 11,000 lawsuits against Monsanto that have already gone through for the effects of just Roundup.
Yeah.
That's just Roundup.
And then another 14,000
ones that haven't gone through yet.
That haven't actually been
awarded. And that's just Roundup. They still have things going on for Agent Orange all the time, along with many other things they've created.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're in a chemical developing business.
And see,
I think
I thought it was interesting because there are seeds that they've developed over the last 30, 40 years. Recent times with droughts and stuff like that, they've basically what we were talking about is that they develop a seed that's drought and water resistant. They sell it to a farmer. They say, you're not allowed to give these seeds to anyone else. You're not allowed to use these seeds a second time for the next season. You have to buy them brand new off of us the next season.
Exactly, because their idea is that since they have created a way for you to yield twice as much a year from your crops, They want to ensure that they're going to continue making that income annually by making sure that you need to purchase those seeds again next year.
Yeah.
Monsanto has actually taken people to court because people planted seeds in their crops, and then wind accidentally carried the seeds into a neighbor's plot of land. And a Monsanto rep came out and took a sample and learned that the neighbor had some of Monsanto's corn.
It wasn't even like he planted
and
them
hadn't
all.
paid for it. And so Monsanto sued the dude who bought the seeds from him originally and accidentally let them blow into the neighbor's crops.
I wouldn't even say accidentally let them. It's just
no, he didn't let them.
That's
but that's how they worded it.
Yeah.
That he accidentally let that happen, and so he is liable.
Yeah, and see, that's just crazy. Like, you're a multi-billion-dollar company, and you're worried about one farmer getting 5
you
to
sent
30
one of your
seeds.
high-paid lawyers out to a dude's crop to take a corn sample.
First of all, how did he get to the other farmers onto his land and sample his without some type of court order?
That was it. When people were getting these seeds and signing these contracts and everything, people would come out to inspect and make sure that their seeds weren't spreading. They weren't giving them to people or selling them.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Or saving them from the year before.
I'm saying the farmer that didn't sign on and use their seed isn't contracted to use their seed. How did they get a warrant of any kind or any kind of jurisdiction to go into that guy's property?
They make bombs. They don't need warrants.
That's true. I guess
they make bombs.
I guess when you're a lawyer investigating whether a seed is in another farmer's land, you can just go on that farmer's land.
Right. Some of the lawsuits against Roundup have paid out massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
There was one of them that had paid over $80 million to a single individual for the effects that Roundup had on him. Mm-hmm. There's another one that paid out over $70 million, and there's many, many small ones beyond that. People believe that they could potentially, that Roundup itself and its effects could include autism. I don't know about that, but people believe it.
Yeah, it's been tied in a way of certain scientists are saying that it's tied to mental and what's the word I'm looking for stomach? Intestinal problems and stuff.
Yeah.
So they said certain intestinal diseases that have been cropping up a lot more over the last 50 years. Cropping up.
Lol.
Oh, God.
But no, it's, yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's that plus, of course, they say there's cancer-causing agents in it. So.
Yeah, and people I'm not going to say people don't like to blame people, because they do. Pretty much anything out there that we don't know the cause of, people blame it on Monsanto.
Yeah.
Almost completely. But we do know for a fact that Roundup is bad.
Yes.
Argentina is a good example of that. But worth noting, Argentina uses 8 to 10 times more pesticides than the U.S. do. Mm-hmm. Right. They also have less regulations. So going to Argentina, there were examples of it being used near homes, near schools, the chemicals being stored incorrectly in town, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Near people.
Safety standards much lower.
Yeah. Right now they use over 84 million gallons of it a year. Jesus. Right. The cancer rate in Argentina is 2 to 4 times higher than the national cancer rate.
Yeah, and that's since Roundup's been being used.
Since Roundup's been used.
So
exactly.
There's a small correlation there.
Exactly. So obviously it has an effect, because Argentina is a good example of that.
Yeah.
But then back in the 90s, they said that it's as safe as table salt.
I believe it.
And practically harmless.
Well, there was that one guy who was like, I'll drink a gallon of it right now.
Yeah, there was a Monsanto rep that said he would be willing to drink a gallon of it because it wouldn't do him any harm. And then when they called him out on it, he said he wasn't stupid, so he's not going to do it.
They were like, yeah, we have a gallon right now. Let's go drink some.
Yeah.
He was like, well, I'm not stupid.
He said, it's not going to hurt me. They were like, well, why won't you drink it? Well, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So obviously, it's damaging to an individual. Roundup.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they say that there's no scientific backing to it, but then again, that's easy to fake, honestly.
Yeah.
But more recently, I think you guys probably heard, or at least seeing some little bits of it, about Bayer buying out Monsanto pretty soon here.
It was a merger.
Yeah. Well, it's a merger, but I think Bayer's keeping Monsanto on with its name, but it's actually actually like owned by Bayer.
It was a merger of the two companies. Bayer owns it. It was a $66 billion project. The merger was. And I believe the original CEO of Monsanto, he's no longer in the picture.
Yeah, he's
not original, but the guy who was the CEO before Bayer.
Yeah, he got bought out.
Before the Bayer merger. Yeah, I got like $19 million in stocks and $16 million severance pay or something like that.
It's pretty good.
So I don't know if they paid him out, but he got a severance pay though. So
well, it's interesting because in the past, with not just Monsanto and not with GE, but usually like when a company is avoiding something dire to itself, either public image or financially, it usually will sell itself to another company or merge itself.
You see a lot of it these days. Many companies have.
That's like the number one. Yeah, that's like the number one way to get out of something as a company. So it just makes me wonder what's going on. Like Monsanto's a billion dollar a year business.
Right.
Bayer's been wanting to buy them out for like 20 years.
Right.
And now just randomly coming up to 2020, they're like, okay, yeah, we'll merge with you and sell ourselves out.
Their companies are similar in some ways and different in others. Bayer is heavily a pharmaceutical company. Mm-hmm. Now that they own Monsanto, they of course own the Roundup line, various pesticides. Actually, I have a list here. Bayer owns Monsanto, Curenta, the Climate Corporation, Radiometrics. They own the rights to a product called Advocate, which protects animals from parasites, Afrin, Aleve, Alka-Seltzer, aspirin, Baycox, animal pesticides. Claritin. Baycox is an animal pesticide. Claritin, Cropstar, Dr. Scholl's Drought Guard, which is one of the seeds that Monsanto had originally created that was drought resistant. Mm-hmm. Harness, which is a brand of pesticides. Medrad, Nexivar, Roundup, Superdin, and that was just me picking out the ones that I had heard of before.
Yeah, those were just us picking out the ones we knew the names of. If you go to
their site, Bayer's site, you can look through all of their affiliates and all of their brands, and like the list is so big that you can just click on like M and just look at the stuff they own that's under M. It's like alphabetical, and it'll skip you through.
It's massive.
It is massive. They were a giant company, and now they own Monsanto, so they're an even bigger company.
They own Monsanto, but like their shareholders, like 55%, like voted against it.
And that's
like,
recent.
That was like a couple days ago. They were like, we don't want to own this company with all its problems with Agent Orange, Roundup, its current lawsuits.
Yeah, stockholders or shareholders and also like employees feel that way. Mm-hmm. People who worked for the Bayer Corporation, which arguably evil in their own way, they even think that Monsanto is evil.
Yeah. We could probably do a whole episode on Bayer.
Just pharmaceuticals in general. It's like, it's a really hot topic right now, something that could be talked about maybe in our next episode or something. But even those people believe that Monsanto is shady. Yeah. The people that most people think are shady think that Monsanto is shady. Mm-hmm. That says something.
That does say something about your company. When over half of the shareholders are like, we don't want that company.
Right.
Now most of them might just have a financial aspect in it. Like they don't want to have the lawsuit carry over into where Bayer has to deal with it. But
yeah, that's fair, since people are still suing them for Roundup, and
that's just Roundup.
Just Roundup.
What else?
They have many other even just pesticides.
Yeah.
Roundup isn't their only pesticide, but Roundup does account for over 50% of Monsanto's sales any given year.
That's crazy.
It is their biggest product.
It is their biggest product. It saved them from bankruptcy, and they probably have a lot of, because like I was saying, $1.6 billion in R&D just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So what else are they developing that could also be a problem 10 years down the road?
Sure, exactly.
Especially if they know about it now and they're selling themselves out to another company.
Yeah.
So
that brings us up to current. That's all the info.
That's the hard facts we were kind of focusing on this one. There's a few other conspiracies we actually were having some talks about. But
there's conspiracies. on top of that, I think it's important to note that, like, not everything Monsanto has done is evil. In fact, some of the things that Monsanto have done have been incredibly important.
Oh, yeah.
The development of these GMOs was originally a very good thing.
And
still arguably today a good thing. GMOs, we got to talk about GMOs for a second, because GMOs they're not always bad.
No.
Whether or not you think Monsanto making sure people have to pay for their GMO seeds every single year is bad is one thing.
I get it as a business, though.
I get it as a business, but the development of that GMO is an incredible thing. The fact that now you can plant twice as much corn.
You can make them droughts.
You can plant twice as much corn that yields twice as much crop.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. And like you said, they have ones that are resistant to drought. They have ones that are resistant to flood. Mm-hmm. That's incredible.
For a farmer, that's paramount. Being able to raise your crop and not have to worry about a flooding completely bankrupting you, and now you can't feed your family.
Exactly, especially in areas where it's known to happen.
On a regular basis.
You would opt to pay the extra money to get the flood-resistant Monsanto seeds to kind of hedge your investment in your own crop. You know what I mean? Just in case a flood does happen, you're in the clear.
For me and Simon, I think we agree pretty strongly that GMOs are not bad. It's greed that makes it bad. They push the limits on what they can actually do with a GMO.
Right.
And then they tread dangerous territory.
We're strictly talking plants here at the moment.
Yeah, just
because that's what we're getting into. Also, they made Argentina the #1 supplier of soybeans for the world.
Probably a huge economical boom if their cancer wasn't much higher.
It was. They ended up having, the cancer thing. Yeah, but they're the #1 supplier of soybeans for the world, and prior to that, they weren't. Yeah, so economical boost.
Yeah, I mean,
good for Argentina.
GMOs done right. Like I said, me and Simon's opinion is that it's a good thing. When you create a plant that still provides you the same nutrition, but you protect it from being able to die as easily, that's not a bad thing. You're just removing certain traits or adding some extra bit.
Sure.
But,
and I like to try and look at things from a business point of view.
Yeah.
I'm not an avid businessman by any means, but looking at it from a business point of view, if you give people these seeds that are essentially super seeds, is what they originally deemed them.
Yeah.
These super seeds, and they can just replant them. You spend all this money developing this super seed.
And
then they'll just replant it the next year.
Or they'll start selling those seeds to other farmers nearby.
Yeah, because you can sell seeds that you've yielded from your own crop. People do that all the time. That's a normal thing. So
I get that. Like I said, I understand from a business standpoint, it sucks. I would rather them end world hunger kind of thing.
Exactly.
But you can't stay in business doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like at what point do you expect somebody to actually make the decision for the betterment of mankind rather than themselves?
Yeah.
You have to realize that most people will not make the decision that's better for other people before they make the decision that's good for themselves.
Yeah,
that's just the average mindset.
People have to have a roof over their head. Like
at this point, they're running a business with thousands and thousands of employees they have to pay. They just spend all these billions of dollars and realize they created something excellent. And then if they only get sales for it for 10 years instead of continuing to get sales from it for years and years after that, how are they going to continue paying their employees and also paying off the research and development for that sort of thing?
Yeah, or continue research and development, period.
Right.
Maybe they can push the envelope a little farther and get a better, GMO out there.
Yeah.
But, like we were saying, I think that's completely acceptable for a company to do. Agent Orange, not so much.
No.
But I get it. They were just trying to help the army by winning a war, and they went too far.
It was wrong in the way that it was chemical warfare.
Yes, absolutely.
But the treaty came afterwards. Mm. That's kind of like their, it wasn't bad at the time.
There's
but
still
like
people
if it would have served its intended purpose, they wouldn't even consider it nearly as detrimental as they do. The reason people are so upset about it is because they ended up hurting their own forces and then denying it later.
Yeah.
And then admitting to it later, as they so often do.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't deny
first thing to do is deny when you mess up. So
yeah, that seems to
for
be
a company anyways.
That seems to be the go-to.
But yeah, I mean, coming down to it, GMOs, not a bad thing. If you guys think it's a bad thing and you have any kind of research or any real reason behind it that you can voice to us, let us know for sure.
Yeah.
We'd like to hear your opinion on the situation.
The GMO is not the bad thing. It's the people that have the patents on these GMOs. If you go on to Monsanto's Bayer's website now.
Yeah.
If you go onto Bayer's website and you go through a list of their patents and their products, a lot of these seeds are on there so that nobody else can actually create those.
Yeah.
And you can see a lot of interviews of people who work for Monsanto and Bayer trying to justify what they're doing. And it's easy to justify. The easiest way to justify it is to say that in the future, with climate change and with our more and more extreme climate that we're in, you're going to need these. You're going to need these drought resistant and you're going to need these flood resistant seeds.
Well, yeah, not even considering weather, like just climate changing.
Just climate change in general.
Over the last 25 years.
Exactly.
Like we have to stay up with the times. We have to be able to combat it.
They're finding ways to make crops that can survive heats they couldn't survive before, as well as colds that they couldn't survive before. So if the weather gets terrible, it would be an excellent thing for the world to have crops ready that can survive that. Mm-hmm. So easy to justify. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But is it right for them to charge people for it rather than to allow the world to benefit from it?
I wish, honestly, in that particular situation, that it couldn't have been patented.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a seed. Just because you found out how to reconstruct its DNA a specific way doesn't mean you should own that.
Or even if it was like patented, but I don't know. They would have to find a way to continue compensating them for it, I guess. But to make it so that you're bottlenecking the progression of people by not allowing everybody to have access to these super seeds that could, like you said, potentially solve world hunger.
Yeah.
They are more concerned with lining their own pockets and their employees' pockets than they are with...
Well, I think that's any patent, really.
Yeah.
Like, I think...
Sure.
I understand... intellectual property. Hey, I developed this. It's mine.
Yeah.
I get it. You want to be able to make money off of it, but I honestly think if someone else can replicate it, they should be able to produce the same thing. You just have to produce it better or cheaper or...
Yeah, like when would you consider it a monopoly? Because if you have a patent on it...
That's a monopoly, right?
Exactly.
There.
It's something as major as that the whole world could benefit from.
Yeah.
But they have deemed that this is the price they're going to sell it for.
And no one else is allowed to sell it.
And no one else is allowed to sell it. And if they want to raise the prices because of inflation or just cost of doing business.
Or, for instance, to burn out a farmer that they want his lands for.
Yeah, exactly. Or to take somebody's lands, they can do that. Yeah. That is a monopoly.
Yeah, I think we talked about there was a few cases of Monsanto would basically, a farmer would have a drought or a flood.
This happened numerous times in the past. I don't have any numbers on it, and I don't have any names, but if you watch any documentary on Monsanto or even just look into various lawsuits and buyouts Monsanto's had in the past, you'll find it. There's been many instances where they will approach a farmer whose crop is flooded. Mm-hmm. He's not going to make any money that year, and he is not prepared for that.
He's in debt.
He's in debt, exactly. And what they'll do is they will buy the farm from him, give him a job at his own farm, making money, and that's that.
Yeah.
So they come in when people are at their weakest, and they buy their lands off of them, and then start planting their own seeds, which they don't have to pay for annually because that's their own seeds.
They own it.
They own it, and they'll let the dude keep working there. They're like, oh well,
now you're an employee.
It's your farm, but it's our farm.
Yeah.
But you work for us.
I don't have the numbers on me, but Monsanto themselves said that they own 0.05% of the U.S. market farmland.
Really?
Seems like a really small number, but it comes out
about how much farmland there is.
Exactly. Though. It comes out as something like 197,000 acres, and they said it's mostly for production of crops.
Yeah.
For like customers, so they can sell their seed to customers. That's like their number one priority.
Makes sense.
And then they say they use the other for research.
That makes sense.
So
they reproduce their own seeds.
Yeah. So they.
Oh, and they also
the
had
cases that we're talking about was like he said, it was basically a farmer had a bad season, couldn't pay his bills, Monsanto steps in, says, hey, work for us and we'll buy your farm out and you won't be in debt. The other scenario was they'd come in and say, hey, you can buy our seed off of us for, well, 3 times as much as it usually is because you're in need. If you can't, then, we'll buy your farm when you go under. Or you can get this nifty loan, buy our seed, but you can't use the seed again next year.
Exactly. And then eventually they developed Terminator seeds as well.
Yep.
Terminator seeds, they still seed. Mm-hmm. You can still harvest seeds from them, but they are infertile. They won't actually do anything.
See, that's the kicker. I get it, wanting someone to not be able to sell seeds to a farmer or reuse them the next season, but then going in to specifically genetically modify it to where it can't seed. That's evil.
That is evil. It is. It's like what percentage, there must have been some percentage of people that were getting around their system and reusing seeds or selling seeds to somebody. But I'd be terrified to buy like bootleg Monsanto seeds when they go around suing people all the time and taking their land.
Yeah, suing them, taking their land and saying, oh, we're just using it for research, or you can work for us and we'll develop our own seeds that we're going to sell to other farmers in need.
Yeah, right. So it's at what point does it become wrong?
The moment you decide to genetically modify it to where it can't do its intended purpose, which is reseed.
See,
that's where it's evil to me.
I even think well, if that's wrong, then I think it's wrong to restrict people from being able to reseed them. Selling them, okay, I get it. Like, you got a patent on it. I get that. So, like, if you catch someone, like, selling Monsanto seeds out of the back of their truck without a license or something, you could take the seeds from them and be like, hey, you can't sell these seeds. These are our seeds. But preventing someone who has paid you for the right to grow them, it's like the right only lasts one growing season. Then you got to pay for the right again.
Now, to speak on that, they weren't allowed to regrow the seeds that seeded from the GMO.
Right.
But they were able to use it in feed and other things.
Right. That's true.
They were allowed to use it for feed, for cattle, different things like that.
Right.
They just weren't allowed to reseed again with that particular seed that had bloomed.
Right.
See, like I said, you're not specifically stopping it from having a purpose. You're just restricting so that you have a guaranteed customer.
That makes sense.
That's crappy, but it's a business.
I get it. No,
That's a business move.
I get why somebody would do that.
Now, developing the seed to where it can't even produce a seed, to me, you've now altered its natural process. And now you've gone over the line for me.
I think it creates a seed, but it will not grow. I believe. I'm not sure. We'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
But either way, like there's people that think, well, animal GMOs, that's bad. Genetically modifying an animal to get a higher yield of
that's bad.
Meat or whatever you want to call it, we can accept that as bad. Not everybody does, but we can. You can buy like a lot of meat that you get in the supermarket is GMO. GMOs are not illegal in America.
No.
There are countries...
They're frowned upon by people who just don't want anything to do with them. But
85% of America's corn is GMO corn.
Yep.
85%.
And that's grown over the last 10 years, hasn't it?
It probably has.
I think it's
that's
grown to
an old
96%.
That's an old number, but... Well, part of it's because of how much of it you can grow at a time.
Yeah.
You can grow more of it in less space faster.
And as our population grows, there's a lot more mouths to feed.
We
need
more food, and we're trying to keep it at a price that everybody can afford. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. The animals, not so much. It's cruel, we could call it.
Yeah.
Most people can agree on that. And that's where people get the idea that plant GMOs are bad. They're like, oh, GMOs and animals, that's cruel. GMOs in general are cruel. GMOs, actually, we are able to create more feed for animals. And the animals don't care. The corn that is grown by the GMO, they have not been able to prove that the crop itself is bad for you.
Yeah, they've done tons of research on it, too.
They've done tons of studies. They have proven it is bad for you with the pesticides on it. And unfortunately, if you test any produce inside a supermarket, they've said you can find as little as 1, but as much as 20 plus pesticides in trace amounts in or on the produce you're eating.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, they douse it in Roundup.
Yeah.
And that ensures that it will grow and it won't just be... It ensures that it will grow.
Yep.
So that makes sense.
It won't die from the weed taking all its sort like its nutrients.
Exactly. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks, but it's the world we live in.
It is. It shouldn't be the world we live in.
No, it should not be the world.
If we were able to, well, the patent has to go up eventually. That's probably one they'll try and renew. But
yeah, they'll try.
Eventually, if they even just
Especially
made
since
it,
Baird.
if they even just made it so another company could do the same thing that they're doing, that would leave room for a company to come up and say, hey, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're not going to charge you every single year for it. We think that's wrong. If they did that, that would ruin Monsanto.
Yeah.
For one. So
yeah, it would
which would be a big
company.
deal. And like when you have a company as big as Bayer or Monsanto, it's kind of a staple in the economy.
They're worth billions and billions and billions of
Billions of dollars. They put money into and take money out of circulation. You know what I mean?
Monsanto's in 50-something countries. Like
yeah, they're international.
Yeah, well, I think they have they're the biggest agricultural company in the world.
They are.
So
they're agricultural investors as well.
Yeah.
By stealing people's land. That's how they do it.
We know how that goes.
Exactly. Exactly.
We invested in your farmland, so now we own it.
Now we own it because you didn't grow anything this year.
And by the way, we can grow stuff all year round.
So that's wrong. It has, in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion, it started out as a chemical company trying to make some money. They created a couple things that were staples. Tires. They aided in tires.
Did some really good things.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
They created coolant that at the time was needed for transformers. They later banned it. They accepted that and moved on. They got a military contract, which is where things go south for a lot of people. And they created a chemical that was detrimental to
people.
Yeah.
I mean,
people.
Straight
Exactly.
up, just people.
And that's when people started paying attention.
Yeah, that was considered their big dark moment in history.
It was a dark enough moment for them that they later tried to sweep it under the rug by becoming Solutia.
Yeah.
So that people wouldn't associate the two things together. Obviously, it didn't work because they went bankrupt 6 years later.
Yeah. Which I think was actually meant to be.
Probably.
I think it was done to avoid the lawsuits from Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Because U.S. military was just as affected as Vietnamese.
How are you going to pay people if you don't have any money?
Yeah. And there was, at the time, there was a lot of...
Monsanto itself did not become Solutia. Monsanto's chemical department,
Yeah.
which is the department that was being sued for Agent Orange, became Solutia. That's why Monsanto continued to live on.
Oh,
So,
see, I thought
Solutia
Monsanto
splits
actually...
off,
Oh, okay.
and then 6 years later, Solutia goes bankrupt.
See, I thought it was the other way around. I thought Monsanto had changed its name, registered it as Solutia.
Monsanto's chemical department, yeah.
Yeah,
Monsanto
I thought it
Chemical
was the
became Solutia.
I thought it was the entire company. They opened a sub corporation and then renamed that one Monsanto because that's why they said we're a relatively new company. I thought they actually had a completely new business idea. And
See, that's why it was a problem that they said they were a relatively new company because they weren't. They just got rid of the small part of them that people were so upset about. But then later they continued the chemical business.
Yeah, of course.
Because Solutia went bankrupt and they were like, so can we open a chemical business again?
No, I guarantee what happened is it went bankrupt. They were like, well, that's out of the way. This is our new R&D, and we're going to buy all the patents from Solutia, by the way.
Yeah.
Because they went bankrupt, so we're going to buy all the patents.
It's messed up. That's pretty messed up. I mean, they still pay people for lawsuits all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They do. So obviously it made it back to them somehow. I'm not an expert in law.
Me either.
By definition, that's not what I am.
By definition, that might be what I am one day.
One day. I doubt that. I don't think you're ever going to be an expert in law.
Come on now.
You're not on the right track. You're just not.
I know enough.
Fair.
But yeah, so they did all that shady stuff and that's after Roundup too. And just people started realizing Roundup's issues. So they did the Solutia thing too.
Yep.
And then later on, they mess up even more with Roundup. They lose the court like the actual lawsuits, which their lawyers literally said was a big mistake.
Yeah.
And then now we're coming up on 2020. They've been developing other recent chemicals and stuff because their R&D
more pesticides.
More pesticides, but not just that, pharmaceuticals and stuff. And now...
Because now they're bare.
Now the smartest move, if they made another big mistake in history, would be to sell themselves off to a massive company that could sweep it all under the rug again.
Yep.
And here comes Bayer for a $66 billion merger.
In. And Bayer had been around for a long time as well. Early in the 1900s, the U.S. government actually took Bayer's name and logo from them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they took their name and logo from them. It was called like Sterling something after that. But then they didn't actually get their name and their logo back until the 90s.
Really?
Really. So they got their name and their logo back, and then 10 years later they got Monsanto.
I wonder why they took their name and logo.
I don't know. I didn't get far into the Bayer Corporation because I figured we could do like a whole nother episode on Bayer, and that'll probably be our pharmaceuticals episode.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Maybe that should be our next episode. Pharmaceuticals.
Maybe. There's a lot more going on. The thing is, Monsanto is just one company, but there's a lot of companies in this area that have done just as terrible things and swept as much under the rug as they could.
If not more.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, Monsanto got a military contract to do something, and they did it. With the approval of the government.
Yep.
And they did it, and they made money. So it's like, who's the evil person in that scenario? Is it Monsanto for doing something for a bunch of money with their own government's approval? Or is it the government for contracting a company to make something that was used in chemical warfare in a war that a lot of people didn't want to be fighting at the time?
I'm going to say it's both their fault.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
One for saying, hey, yeah, we'll do it for X amount of money, and the other one for saying, do it.
Yeah, they're both in the wrong. One person had to ask, and it's wrong to ask, and the other person had to agree to do it, and that was wrong too.
Exactly. Let's not try to just blame one. Both parties are pretty bad on that.
Exactly. Well, plus they already helped them with the atomic bomb, so they knew that Monsanto wasn't like above aiding and killing people.
Yeah. Well, another thing, the Solutia thing that happened with the Agent Orange, that's also around the time that the VA and stuff and Vietnam vets were like that's when Agent Orange, they finally started deciding to pay out to vets as that's a real thing. For a long time, it was denied. And that's where, if you guys are concerned that this is a little bit more of a history lesson rather than conspiracy, the conspiracy is that this company has done bad things. They deny it for X amount of years until they can't deny it anymore. And people like blame it and say things, and like they're called crazy. They're called, like they don't know what they're talking about. There's no science to prove it. But then later on it comes out to light that, yeah, actually the entire time that was a terrible thing and we knew about it.
And they still managed to get away from it somehow. The
bigger picture of this episode is that companies do this all the time. People, like right now with Roundup, there's still scientists and R&D and everybody's saying there's no scientific proof that it causes cancer.
Right. If you can watch, interviews of these people who are involved in the lawsuits, or in some cases you can actually watch the court hearing itself. And how they describe it is like in the case where they had to pay out the gentleman $80 million for what Roundup did to him. They afterwards were just like, well, we don't think it was our fault, but we lost the case. It's unfortunate that we lost the case.
Yeah, they say it's a fluke and things like that.
We're paying him $80 million, but it was a mistake. We're still selling Roundup because people need it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's the conspiracy, is that a company can do something for 10, 20, 30 years and it'll finally come to light. But the people who are raising their voice about it or saying this is a bad thing, this is what it's doing, and they're just shot down by people who are paid to say things.
Exactly. But the court itself is deciding that Roundup is causing these ailments in people.
Yeah. But the company's like, we think it's a mistake.
They don't agree with that. Why hasn't it been banned yet?
Well, Roundup, or not Roundup, but Monsanto said, we're going to fight this vehemently in court.
Yeah.
We believe it's going to get appealed. For like the last 10 years they've been saying.
They say that all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're still fighting it against people, but it's still for sale on the shelves. we don't have just Roundup now. There's multiple forms of Roundup even. Yep. There's like Roundup XL and Roundup 2, and they got all
there's an
this
XD or something.
Roundup XD. They got all these different Roundups for sale
different things.
that the court system has already determined is detrimental to the health of the public.
But it's not being taken off the shelves.
Monsanto has not. Why does that give them the right to sell it?
Because it's cheaper to deal with the lawsuits long run.
Right. I think the main problem is you couldn't ban it right now.
It'd leave a massive vacuum.
The hit that crops would take if you just stopped giving people the seeds that are resistant to Roundup. They said it themselves. You can plant twice as much per square acre with those seeds. So if we do not have those anymore, rough.
Yeah, rough.
So what do you do in that situation?
90, like your number was, I think the more updated number was like 96% of all corn is GMO owned by Monsanto. Like,
yeah, right.
Now imagine Monsanto bankrupt because they had to take Roundup off the shelves. And
where's that corn coming from now?
Yeah, where's that corn? We're going to plant normal corn.
It's to the point where the GMOs, Roundup's a problem. The GMOs themselves are so essential to life at this point. Everything has corn in it. We're not just talking corn.
Corn syrup.
Exactly.
Animal feed is majority corn.
Think of everything you see high fructose corn syrup in.
Yeah.
Like all of your beverages. This beverage we're drinking right now, I'm sure it's got some in there.
Yeah, most foods of any corn, like any processed food of any kind has some type of corn syrup or corn additive.
The oils from corn, people make plastics out of it. All sorts of stuff comes from corn.
And that's just one aspect of the business that would end up just instantly failing.
And
now rubber tires.
Right.
And
exactly. See, and that's just corn. It's also a huge deal when it comes to soybeans, which is massive. Soy oil is a big deal.
Yeah. No, it really is.
It's also all around you in cotton plants. What are we going to do when suddenly we have half as much cotton in this world because they are international?
More like 1/3 are cotton resources.
What happens when we lose all of our cotton and we lose all of our soybeans and we lose all of our corn and we lose all of our canola?
Now, we're not justifying
and that's
Monsanto.
Just a couple. No, I'm not justifying
We're
Monsanto.
saying that a monopoly with patents does that.
You would need to find something else to do.
Yeah.
Like, the monopoly of patents is the problem. But at the same time, part of the reason they're able to grow so many is because of the Roundup. They're able to cover their stuff in Roundup to ensure that it will grow.
Yeah.
So even if we just couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, it would cut, like we were saying.
We'd lose a lot to pests. That's what it is.
Pesticides and not pesticides, but yeah, basically just from weeds and different things. You'd have to plant them farther apart, which means that now you have to grow like 30% of what you originally could with the actual GMO and Roundup. So
right, exactly.
So
and
instead of producing 10,000 corn,
originally we could have just stuck with the corn that grows 2 times in a growing season. We could have stuck with that and been like, this is good. We just about doubled our output.
Yeah.
Some of the corn doesn't make it.
And
so not quite double, but
yeah. Still, we could have just went with that. If we had just looked at the GMO closely and then not had patents to restrict other people researching it and finding out what the possible hazards later down the road would be.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's not just big businesses either. You'll find a lot of local farmers use stuff like Roundup. A ton of them stand by it. People do. I
can drink a gallon of it.
He said he could drink a gallon of it. People have deemed that it's essential and that they would not be able to make money without Monsanto seeds and Roundup. So it's something that we need. Their production of these chemicals and these seeds itself does not seem like a bad thing. It's how they handle it. And when people come out and say, hey, this is causing cancer in people, rather than saying, okay, we need to revise the way we do things, they deny it and continue selling the same product.
Yeah, they deny it, blame a broken court system.
Yeah.
And then say, we're still going to sell our product. So come at us, bro.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened.
That's really all they do.
I just, like you said, I don't understand why a company can't just own up to it and be like, hey, we are really sorry about that. We will pay you out. That sucks. Hopefully we don't go bankrupt. Here's a new, like, we're going to do some research into a new product. And
that'd be much more admirable of a company.
Yeah, I'd probably buy stock in a company that, like,
a company that size that's able to come out and admit that they did something wrong.
Yeah, we're gonna lose millions to possibly billions of dollars.
They're losing millions anyhow.
But
and now they're the center of conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
So
some people call them Monsanto.
Monsanto, people say.
Yeah.
We have
even Bayer, like their company, which is not a great company to begin with, like 55% is like, they're so bad we don't want them. And the CEO is like, well, we're going to buy them. And the shareholders like, we're outvoting you. And then the CEO is like, it doesn't really matter. I'm still buying it.
We're still going to do it anyhow.
Like, come on now. That's pretty bad.
We have a Monsanto commemorative 3-diamond members knife here that was given to me years and years ago and was given to the person who gave it to me years before that. We're going to take some pictures of that. We're going to put it up on our Facebook.
It's a cool knife.
And our Twitter, probably our Patreon and stuff. So people should go and check that out. There's not a whole lot more to say in this episode. It was more informative than it was actually giving opinions on it.
Yeah, I think we were going pretty good for and just informing people. I definitely want to get the message out there about the conspiracy behind it all. Is that it's more of a generalized conspiracy related to all companies that get a little too big for their britches, as one would say.
Yeah. And we were going to go a little bit into the climate control part of it, but I'd really rather people just go watch the episode because we don't have...
It's a good episode.
There's so much to cover if we try and get into that. There's a lot more we have to explain. So if you go and check out that episode, if you're interested, it would teach you a little bit more. And we mentioned Monsanto pretty briefly in that and how they managed to take crops from people in the past and in the future. And in the current.
I forgot that we mentioned Monsanto during that one. I knew we talked about GE, but I didn't know
I think we did. If not, now that you've seen this episode, you would know we were talking about Monsanto if you went back to the other one, and you'd be able to make the connections as to why maybe Monsanto would invest in companies that are interested in weather control and how they could use that to their benefit.
Well, before GMO was developed, that was the only other way to control crop growth.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Yep. Be sure to...
go ahead.
All right. Be sure to go find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Patreon and GoFundMe if you feel so inclined to donate to the cause. We will buy more pizza, more beer, more microphones so we can have more people and talk about more conspiracies.
That'll be fun.
On the podcast. That will be fun. We're pretty close. We're going to hopefully do that here pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got something lined up. We might be able to get it to work.
We do. Well, we're keeping it on the DL right now because it might not happen. So we don't want to
I'm not naming anything.
So we don't want to talk about it too much. You can listen to our podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. You can also do it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Libsyn. Oh man, we're all over the place. Castbox for the mobile users out there. That's a good one.
YouTube.
I think I said YouTube.
Don't go to YouTube.
I said YouTube.
Don't go.
We have like 3 views on YouTube, so if you want to bump it up.
Don't. They don't pay us anything.
Just go. They don't. Well, nobody pays us, really.
That's true, actually.
Patron supporters pay us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And a big shout out to you guys, too. So
thanks for stopping by today. Hope you took something away.
Yeah. You guys have a good one.